Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are diving into something really cool, the psychology of persuasion.
Oh, yeah.
And we've
That
got
was going to be good.
we've got some excerpts from Influence, the Psychology of Persuasion by Robert Cialdini.
Yes.
And we're going to unpack the 6 key principles that he kind of lays out in this book.
I love this book.
Yeah.
It's so interesting.
Yeah, and so these principles are reciprocity, commitment, and consistency, social proof liking authority, and scarcity.
It's like you said, it's like he gives us these weapons of influence that we
Yeah.
can use
Yeah.
to kind of get what we want out of situations or at least to be aware of when they're being used on us.
Yeah, for sure, because, knowledge is power.
Right?
So
Absolutely.
if we can identify when these things are happening, we can either, kind of push back against them or use them for our own benefit.
Yeah, exactly. Or just be aware of like, oh, that's what's happening here.
Right.
Like, I'm not going to fall for that,
Right.
Like when a car salesman is using like, the scarcity principle. Totally.
To get me to buy a car that I don't really need.
Yeah, that happens all the time.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's just jump right in. The first principle
Okay.
is reciprocity.
Yes.
So what is that all about?
Yeah, so reciprocity basically means that we feel obligated to give back to people who have given to us,
Okay.
even if it's something small, like a compliment or a favor.
So it's kind of like that you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours kind of.
Yeah, exactly. Like
Yeah.
that's kind of the simple way to think about it.
Okay.
But it goes deeper than that. Like there's actually a psychological principle at play here.
Okay.
Cialdini talks about how even small, unsolicited gifts
Okay.
can trigger this feeling of obligation.
Interesting.
Like, you know how sometimes charities will send you address labels
Yeah.
with a donation request?
Yeah.
Like, that's a perfect example of reciprocity.
Okay.
Like, they're giving you something even though you didn't ask for it,
Right.
and it makes you feel more likely to donate.
Oh, so it's like they're kind of like subtly manipulating us. Right. Yeah, it can definitely be used in manipulative ways,
Gotcha.
but it can also be used for good.
Right.
Like if you do someone a favor without expecting anything in return,
Right.
they're more likely to want to help you out in the future.
Okay, that makes sense.
So it's about creating a sense of mutual obligation and goodwill.
Okay, cool. So reciprocity is all about give and take.
Exactly.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So let's move on to the next principle, which is commitment and consistency.
Yes, this one is really interesting.
What is this one all about?
So basically this principle says that once we've made a commitment,
Okay.
we're more likely to act in ways that are consistent with that commitment,
Okay.
even if it's something small. Like, let's say you sign a petition
Yeah.
supporting a cause you believe in.
Okay.
Later on, you're more likely to donate money to that cause
Okay.
or volunteer your time
Interesting.
because you've already made that initial commitment.
So it's like once we kind of take that first step, we're more likely to keep going in that direction.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's about maintaining a sense of consistency in our actions and beliefs.
Okay. And I'm guessing, like the other principles, this could also be used in both positive and negative ways.
Oh, for sure. Like salespeople use this all the time.
Okay.
Like they'll get you to agree to a small request,
Right.
like maybe just trying out a product.
Yeah.
And then once you've done that,
Uh-huh.
they're more likely to be able to sell you the full product.
Oh, that's clever.
Yeah, it's like they're getting their foot in the door
Right.
with that small commitment.
Okay. So it's like a slippery slope from
Exactly.
a small commitment to a bigger one.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So we've got reciprocity.
Yep.
We've got commitment and consistency.
Yep.
What's next?
All right, so the next one is social proof.
Okay.
And this one is all about how we look to the behavior of others
Okay.
to decide how we should act ourselves.
Oh, I know this one.
Yeah.
It's like that thing where you see a long line outside a restaurant
Yeah.
and you assume it must be good, even if you've never heard of it before.
Right, like, oh, there's a line, so it must be worth the wait.
Right.
And marketers use this all the time.
Right.
Like, those ads that say millions of satisfied customers?
Yeah.
Or those testimonials from real people?
Mhm.
It's all about using social proof.
So they're using the power of the crowd
Exactly.
to influence our decisions.
Yep.
Okay, cool. But I'm guessing this one can also have like a dark side.
Oh, definitely. Like, Cialdini talks about the Jonestown Massacre
Oh, gosh.
as an example of how social proof can go wrong.
Okay.
Like, in that situation, people were so isolated and uncertain
Yeah.
that they looked to the behavior of others, even though those others were making terrible decisions.
Wow, that's a chilling example.
Yeah, it shows how important it is to be aware of social proof
Right.
and to not just blindly follow the crowd.
Yeah, to think for ourselves.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got reciprocity, commitment, and consistency and social proof.
Right.
What's next?
All right, so the next principle is liking.
Liking. Okay.
Yeah, and this one is pretty straightforward.
Okay.
We're more likely to say yes to requests from people we like.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
But Cialdini goes deeper than that,
Okay.
and he talks about the specific factors that make us like someone.
Interesting, like what?
Well, physical attractiveness is a big one.
Okay.
We tend to like people who are attractive.
Yeah, that's not really fair, but it's true.
Right, it's not always conscious, but it's definitely a factor.
Okay.
And then there's similarity.
Okay.
We like people who are similar to us.
Right, the people who share our interests and values.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then there's cooperation.
Cooperation, okay.
Yeah, like if we work together on a project, we're more likely to like each other afterwards.
Even if we didn't like each other before.
Yeah, exactly. It's about building rapport through shared experiences.
Okay, that's interesting. So it's not just about like superficial things.
Right.
It's about like building genuine connections.
Exactly.
Okay, cool. So we've got liking down. What's next?
Okay, so the next principle is authority.
Authority, okay.
And this one is all about how we tend to obey authority figures,
Okay.
even when their requests are questionable.
Yeah, that's kind of scary.
It is, and Cialdini talks about the Milgram experiment,
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that.
where participants were told to deliver electric shocks to
Right.
another person.
And they did it
Yeah, even though they knew it was wrong.
just because someone in a lab coat told them to?
Exactly. It's a really powerful example of how authority can influence our behavior.
Wow. So even when we know something is wrong,
Yeah.
we might still do it.
Right, especially if someone in a position of authority is telling us to.
That's crazy.
It is, and Cialdini talks about how this principle is used in advertising all the time.
Okay.
Like when they use celebrities or experts
Right.
to endorse their product.
Yeah, it's like, oh, if this famous person uses it, it must be good.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's important to be aware of this principle
Yeah, for sure.
and to question authority when it seems appropriate.
Right? Don't just blindly follow orders.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got reciprocity, commitment, and consistency. Social proof, liking, and authority. What's the last one?
Okay, so the last principle is scarcity.
Scarcity.
Yeah, and this one is all about how we value things that are rare or hard to get.
Okay, yeah, like limited edition products or something like that.
Exactly like those Black Friday sales,
Yes.
where everyone goes crazy for the limited time deals.
Right.
It's all about scarcity.
So we're like programmed to want what we can't have.
Right, and Cialdini talks about how this principle can be used to create a sense of urgency
Okay.
and pressure people into making decisions.
Interesting. So it's like a sales tactic,
Yeah.
for sure.
Okay, cool.
So those are the 6 principles of persuasion.
Wow. Okay, so we've got reciprocity, commitment, and consistency.
Yeah?
Social proof, liking, authority, and scarcity.
Yep, that's all of them.
It's like a whole arsenal of psychological weapons that
That,
we can either use or descend against.
right, and just being aware of them
Yeah.
is a huge advantage. Totally.
Mm,
Because now that I know about them,
yeah.
I can see them everywhere.
Right.
Like in advertising and marketing and everyday conversations.
It's like you've got this secret decoder ring
Yeah.
for understanding human behavior.
It's amazing.
It is.
So I think we've covered a lot of ground in this first part of our deep dive.
Yeah, we've just scratched the surface.
But it's a good start.
Yeah, definitely.
And in the next part, we're going to dive deeper into the ethical implications of these principles.
Yeah, we'll talk about how to use this knowledge responsibly.
Because it's powerful stuff.
It is.
And we don't want to use it for evil.
No, we want to use it for good.
Exactly. So stay tuned for part 2.
Yes, we'll be right back.
Welcome back to our deep dive.
Now that we've kind of laid out all 6 of these principles,
Yeah.
I'm kind of thinking like, okay,
Right.
this stuff is powerful
It is.
and a little scary.
Yes. It can be a little bit scary.
Yeah.
But also exciting.
But also exciting, yeah. So,
Yes,
like,
yeah.
where do we go from here? Yeah, that's a great question. And I think the next step is to talk about
Right.
how we can use this knowledge responsibly, right? Because, like we said, these principles can be used for good or for evil.
Right, yeah.
So how do we make sure we're using them ethically?
Right.
How do we become Jedi masters of persuasion?
Okay. I like that.
Yeah.
Jedi Masters of Persuasion.
Right.
So let's start with reciprocity.
Okay.
How can we use that principle for good?
Yeah, so with reciprocity, it's really about shifting your mindset.
Okay.
Instead of thinking about it as like a tit for tat,
Right.
like you do something for me, I'll do something for you.
Right.
Think about it as cultivating goodwill,
Okay.
like genuinely wanting to help others
Right.
without expecting anything in return.
So it's more about being kind and helpful.
Exactly. And when you do that,
Yeah.
people naturally want to reciprocate,
Right.
even if it's not something you've asked for.
Okay, so it's like you're creating this positive cycle of kindness.
Yeah, exactly. And that can be really powerful.
Okay, cool. What about commitment and consistency?
Okay, so with commitment and consistency,
Yeah.
I think it's important to focus on small wins.
Right.
Like instead of trying to get someone to make a huge change all at once,
Right.
encourage them to take small steps in the right direction,
Right.
then celebrate those small wins
Yeah.
because that will help them feel more motivated to
Right.
stay consistent with their commitments.
It's like building momentum.
Exactly. Like it's that snowball effect
Yeah.
where small actions lead to bigger actions.
Okay, cool. What about social proof?
Okay, so with social proof,
Yeah.
I think the key is to focus on authentic examples.
Okay.
Like if you're trying to get people to donate to a charity,
Yeah.
don't just use stock photos of smiling people.
Right.
Show real people who have benefited from the charity's work.
Oh, I see. So it's got to be genuine.
Exactly, because people can spot fake social proof a mile away.
Right. It's got to be real.
Yeah, and when it's real,
Yeah.
it's really persuasive.
Oh, okay, cool.
Mhm.
What about liking?
Okay, so with liking, I
Yeah.
think the most ethical way to use it
Okay.
is to focus on building genuine connections.
Okay.
Like find common ground with people,
Yeah.
show that you're interested in them,
Right.
and be yourself.
Right. Be authentic.
Exactly, because people can tell when you're being fake,
Yeah.
and that's a surefire way to make them dislike you.
Okay. So it's all about being genuine and building real relationships.
Exactly.
Okay, cool. What about authority?
Okay, so with authority,
Yeah.
I think the most important thing is to be transparent
Okay.
about your credentials.
So don't just claim to be an expert.
Right, like don't try to fake it
Right.
because people will see through that and
Yeah.
it will backfire.
Okay.
So if you want to use authority ethically,
Yeah.
back up your claims with evidence,
Right.
cite credible sources,
Okay.
and be honest about your limitations.
So it's like building trust
Exactly.
through transparency.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And what about the last one, scarcity?
Okay, so with scarcity,
Yeah.
I think the key is to focus on the unique value of what you're offering.
Okay.
Like if you're selling a product,
Uh,
don't just say, it's only available for a limited time.
right.
Explain why it's special,
Okay.
why people should want it.
So highlight its intrinsic value.
Exactly, because scarcity only works if people actually want the thing in the first place.
Right. If they don't care about it,
Yeah.
then it doesn't matter if it's scarce.
Well, exactly.
Okay, cool. So those are some tips for using Cialdini's principles ethically.
Yeah.
I'm feeling a lot better about this now. I feel like it's not all doom and gloom.
No.
It's actually pretty exciting
It is.
to think about how we can use this knowledge to make a positive impact.
Yeah. And to protect ourselves from being manipulated.
Right.
So it's a win-win.
Totally.
Okay, so I think we've covered a lot of ground in this part.
Yeah, this has been a great discussion.
Yeah, it has.
So in the next part,
Yes.
we're going to wrap things up
Yes.
and talk about some key takeaways.
Yes, some things to keep in mind.
And maybe even give our listeners a little challenge.
Oh, I like that. A challenge.
Yeah, to help them put this knowledge into practice.
Yeah, because that's what it's all about.
Right. Action.
Exactly.
Okay. So stay tuned for part 3. Welcome back to the deep dive. So we spent all this time talking about Cialdini's 6 principles of persuasion.
We have.
It's a lot to take in, right?
It is a lot to take in. And
Yeah.
it's like,
There's good stuff.
it's really good stuff, but like, how do we actually put this knowledge into practice?
Right. Yeah. That's the key question. Like, how do we actually use this stuff
Yeah.
in our everyday lives?
Right. Like, I don't want to just be,
Yeah.
aware of it. I want to like actually use it.
You want to wield these weapons of
I
influence
want to wield those weapons. Yeah.
for good,
For good, of course, for good.
of course.
So,
So where do we start?
yeah, where do we start? Like, give me some practical tips.
Okay. All right. So let's start with reciprocity.
Okay.
Remember how we talked about how it's not just about tit for tat?
Yeah.
It's about building goodwill.
Right. So, like, a practical tip would be to make a point of doing something nice for someone
Okay.
every day.
Like what?
It could be something small, like holding the door open for someone.
Okay.
Or complimenting a coworker.
Right.
Or just listening to a friend who's having a bad day.
Yeah.
Like, just little things.
Little acts of kindness.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you don't have to expect anything in return.
Right.
Just do it out of the goodness of your heart.
Because it feels good to be kind.
Yeah, exactly. And the more you do it,
Yeah.
the more it will become a habit.
Okay.
And the more people will want to reciprocate.
So it's like you're building up this karmic bank account.
Yeah, exactly.
Of goodwill.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. What about commitment and consistency?
Okay, so with commitment and consistency,
Yeah.
the practical tip here is to start small.
Okay.
Like,
Yeah.
don't try to make a huge change all at once because that's overwhelming.
Yeah.
So instead, break down your goals
Right.
into smaller, more manageable steps.
Yeah. Right, so it's like bite-sized pieces.
Exactly. And then once you've achieved one small step,
Yeah.
celebrate that win
Okay.
and then move on to the next one.
So it's like building momentum.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, cool. What about social proof?
Okay, so with social proof,
Yeah.
the practical tip is to surround yourself
Okay.
with people who are already doing what you want to do.
Oh, I see.
Like if you want to get in shape,
Yeah.
hang out with people who are already fit.
Right, because their behavior will rub off on me.
Exactly.
Okay.
And if you want to start a business,
Yeah.
connect with other entrepreneurs.
Right.
Because they can offer you support and advice.
So it's all about finding your tribe.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
What about liking?
Okay, so with liking,
Yeah.
the practical tip is to be a good listener.
Okay.
Like really listen to people
Oh,
when they're talking to you.
Right.
Ask questions,
Yeah.
show that you're interested.
Okay.
Because people love to talk about themselves.
That is true.
And if you can make them feel heard,
Yeah.
they'll like you more.
Okay, cool. That makes sense.
Okay.
What about authority?
Okay, so with authority,
Yeah.
the practical tip is to dress for success.
Okay.
Like literally.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because how you dress
Uh-huh.
can affect how people perceive you.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so if you want to be seen as an authority figure,
Yeah.
dress the part.
Okay, so like wear a suit or something like that.
Yeah, or whatever is appropriate for your industry,
Right.
but just make sure you look put together.
Okay, so it's all about first impressions.
Exactly.
Okay, cool.
Wow.
And what about scarcity?
Okay, so with scarcity,
Yeah.
the practical tip is to create a sense of urgency,
Okay.
but do it ethically.
Okay, how do you do that?
Like, instead of saying, this offer is only available for a limited time,
Right.
say something like, we only have a few spots left.
Okay.
Or, this product is selling out fast.
Oh, so it's got to be true.
Yeah, exactly. You don't
Yeah.
want to lie to people.
Oh.
But you do want to create a sense that if they don't act now,
Yeah.
they might miss out.
Okay, cool. So those are some practical tips for using Cialdini's 6 principles of persuasion.
Yeah.
I feel like I could actually use this stuff now.
Good. That's the goal.
Yeah.
So go out there
Yeah.
and wield those weapons of influence
For good.
for good.
Okay, so we've reached the end of our deep dive
We have.
into the psychology of persuasion.
It's been a journey.
It has been a journey,
Yeah.
but it's been a fun one.
It has.
And I feel like I've learned a lot.
Me too.
So to our listeners out there,
Yes.
I hope you've enjoyed this deep dive as much as we have.
I hope so.
And I hope you'll put this knowledge to good use.
Yes, go out there and be persuasive.
But do it ethically.
Of course, ethically.
Okay. Until next time.
Stay curious.